I didn't expect us to go there and win for the first time in the league since 2017. But what a way to do it. There were times when we controlled the game.
This is the first time in years I've been entertained, genuinely entertained by Manchester United. I actually think they can maintain this level of performance.
United won the midfield battle hands down. Ultimately, that was where the game was won and lost. I think Carrick can give the players confidence to go out and express themselves.
I think he could make this job his own.
Delighted for Carrick. I'm delighted for those away fans. I'm delighted for me, to be honest.
Arteta just looked as though the pressure might well be getting to him.
I'm not convinced he should have made that quadruple change. It's very unusual for a manager to make 4 changes in one sweep. And that, to me, just smelt of panic.
They looked all over the place when they went ahead.
Mikel Arteta needs to trust his players, the likes of Bukayo Saka, who's off it again, Martin Odegaard, the forward players, to actually go out and win games with their talent rather than just relying on free kicks and corners.
Arsenal, from a position of supposed strength, now look as though they're there for the taking. But if City can manage to get that right at the back and they can get Haaland scoring again, I think they can pip Arsenal.
Manchester United win at Arsenal. The title race is on. So much to get into. But first of all, silence. Please, everybody, put your phones away. No flash photography. After months of corporate climbing and supposed fame, the man, the myth, the legend, the promotion collector, the assistant editor of one of the country's biggest newspapers, Darren Lewis, is here. Taking a break from signing autographs, ignoring my texts, he's back in the trenches with his friends. Thank you very much and welcome back, Darren.
Thank you very much indeed. I've been to a lot of places with a microphone in front of me, but as you guys and our viewers know, there is really no place like home. And it does feel like home with you two guys, and Lucy and Joe doing a brilliant job behind the glass as well. So thank you for having me.
It's almost like that moment where Han Solo returns from being frozen in carbonite, isn't it, in Star Wars? Or when Steve Carell came back at the end of The Office, you know, for that cameo appearance right at the very end. Or maybe even when the Spice Girls got back together, just for the first time. You know, it's like a momentous moment. Talking of scary spice, Alex Crook is here as well. You're right.
I'm very good. Do you know what? I didn't know that Darren was joining us until I jumped on, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've got him this week of all weeks.
I thought that might be the case. Dare I say, Alex Crook has had a very good weekend. Now, we have been friends for 25 years. I know I would have got less for robbery, and I would have been richer. However, we are very lucky to have a very tight-knit group of friends. And I have to say, over the course of the weekend, Crook, you can explain to everyone, we have had a brilliant weekend. It started with you going out on a bender and ended with your team winning. I mean, does it get much better than that?
And obviously spending time with long lost friends in between. No, it's been a brilliant weekend. You know what? I enjoyed Fulham Brighton. That was the sort of starter, but the main course was definitely served up at the Emirates, wasn't it? What a fabulous afternoon that was. I may have lost my composure a couple of times on air, and at one point I forgot where I was when I was screaming that United should have had a free kick on the edge of the penalty area.
Yeah, I was in the middle of doing a recap of all the scores, and I think I'd got to Rangers are leading against Dundee. That should be a free kick. So, hold on a second. We're not sitting on the sofa watching the 60-inch telly here, Crook. OK, drop points then for Arsenal. Another win for Carrick and one big smug Alex Crook. So we better get to the Emirates. Arsenal 2, Manchester United 3, and it means that Arsenal have lost for the first time this season at the Emirates Stadium. And we did say there would be hysteria if United went 2 for 2 under Michael Carrick. So let's not delay. Crook, have your say.
Listen, I don't want to get carried away because I think the next 5 games are going to tell us a lot more actually about Michael Carrick's ability to get the best out of these players, because it is a dressing room who tend to turn up for the big games and then maybe let themselves down in the matches they're expected to win. So with that in mind, I thought United would give Arsenal a good game on Sunday. I optimistically predicted a score draw. I didn't expect us to go there and win for the first time in the league since 2017. But what a way to do it. The first goal was a bit of a gift from Arsenal. The next 2 were absolutely superb. And you know what? Watching it back last night, as I did in full, there were times when we controlled the game. You know, we were the team who kept possession, particularly in the second half. We were dictating the tempo. I think he got his tactics spot on. I wasn't totally convinced in the first half an hour because I thought it was all a bit laboured and a bit one pace, but I think that was designed to frustrate Arsenal and quieten the home crowd. So he couldn't have done any more. They've won the derby against the second best team in the league, and now they've gone away from home and beaten the top team. Something nobody's managed since May. So absolutely fantastic. And I'm delighted for Carrick. I'm delighted for those away fans. I'm delighted for me, to be honest.
Yeah, so we're all delighted for you. I'm pleased you watched it back because he was pretty sceptical about the way that Manchester United started the game, when clearly they wanted to try and just take the sting out of the match and keep the football deep inside their own half. They weren't rushing things. They're in fact time wasting at times and sort of just slowing the pace of the game down. He was getting very irate about it. So I'm pleased he went back and assessed it properly, because he was a bit emotionally invested when we were at the Emirates yesterday. I don't want to play down the achievements of Michael Carrick in any way, though, Darren, but does he's not reinvented the wheel here, but he has been very clever in the way he's gone about things. But does he have license to do this, only because he is prioritising short-term results and he doesn't have to think too much about the long term?
I don't think so. I'm with Crook, actually. That might surprise you to know, but I have to say it's the first time, as a neutral, I'm not a United fan, with my journalist head on, but also my non-journalist head on as well. This is the first time in years I've been genuinely entertained by Manchester United. And I know that's a big, big call, but there was a lot about there was a common sense approach to the way that Carrick approached it. We've all known, whether you support United or don't, they simply do not work with three at the back. All of their most storied moments, their greatest moments have come with a four. They're back to their attacking traditions. It's a real common sense approach to the way that Carrick approached it. But most of all, I got a sense that the players understood finally what it meant to wear a Man United shirt. There was a standard, a level of performance against Arsenal that I've not seen from them for a long time. They looked like they enjoyed carrying the shirt as well. There was organisation in defence, belief in midfield, speed in attack, and I actually think they can maintain this level of performance. I think that we've seen many, many times, and our non-United listeners will attest to this. Sometimes the answer's right under your nose. I remember Spurs went chasing after Louis van Gaal. He wouldn't come, so they went for Pochettino instead and had some of their greatest moments in in Premier League history. England were after all sorts of big names. They wouldn't come, so they turned to Gareth Southgate, and he completely revitalised the culture. He was the right man for the right period in England's football history. And it might just be that Carrick is the guy under the club's noses who's very understated. I was looking at him on the touchline alongside Arteta, arms waving all over the place outside of his technical area, and he's just got his arms folded behind his back, and he's empowering the players to take ownership, leadership, and they did that superbly well. I think he could make this job his own.
Interesting, isn't it? Because I think he has settled in really well, and it's almost felt seamless. Okay, so that doesn't usually happen, especially not Manchester United, not in the last 10 years anyway. But he's played two teams in which Manchester United are the submissive side, right? So they have to earn the right to be in the game. Whereas I suppose the biggest test, as we've sort of said over the course of the last couple of weeks, actually, when talking about it, and this is the point I was getting to really, will come when they play teams where they have to assert themselves on the football match. They have to make things happen. And that's coming around the corner, Crook.
It is. I think it would. Fulham at home, Palace at home, Tottenham at home, Everton and West Ham away. I mean, you couldn't handpick 5 better fixtures, to be honest, in terms of the current form table. And I think Carrick can give the players confidence to go out and express themselves. It's not rocket science, what he's done. I did a bit of a dive into the game on the talkSPORT website for my comment piece of the weekend. It turned into a bit of an assassination job on Ruben Amorim, which wasn't necessarily the intention when I started writing. But he's gone to a back four. He's abandoned the system that Ruben was wedded to, that was fundamentally flawed in terms of the Premier League and in terms of United's DNA. He's put Kobbie Mainoo back into the team. And I say in the piece that actually ignoring Mainoo all season in itself should have been a sackable offence because we've seen what he can bring. It goes unnoticed because of the quality of the finish, but it was his little pass into Matheus Cunha that actually opened up the space for the Brazilian to score the winner. He's got Bruno Fernandes playing as a number 10 and not just trying to shoehorn him into the team in a deep-lying midfield role. He's got Harry Maguire playing like we know he can, and I thought he was really important to that victory yesterday. He's got Cunha happy to come off the bench and make a contribution. No sulking. He came on and got an assist against City, comes on and gets the winner yesterday. And he's got the best out of Dorgu as well, a player signed by United to suit Amorim's system. But actually, he's a far better winger than he ever was a wing-back. So, as I say, it's not rocket science, and long may it continue.
Yeah, it was a good day for the Manchester United recruitment team, wasn't it? Brian Mbeumo scoring, Patrick Dorgu scoring, Matheus Cunha scoring, and goalkeeper Senne Lomans making a superb stop from Martin Zubamendi when it was 0-0. Talk to me about the other side of the coin, Darren Lewis. Mikel Arteta made a quadruple change just before the hour mark, and it seemed to take Arsenal a very long time to adjust to that. Was that a mistake?
I don't know about a mistake. I mean, I think all the way through the game, Arsenal were really, really curious in so much as they panicked most when they went ahead. And I think there is a lot of pressure on them that they are feeling, particularly digital pressure. There is a huge industry now that has exploded around Arsenal on social media. And as we know, we are in an era where players are on their phones straight after, before and after matches to see how their performances are perceived. And I just wonder whether some of that pressure, is getting to the players, because it was really, really bizarre. We all know just how superb they've been, particularly in defence so far this season. When they went ahead, we know the record. 24 times they've gone ahead, 24 times they've won. They've never lost when they've gone ahead. And yet they looked all over the place when they went ahead. The goal came from an uncharacteristic mistake, the first goal, in defence from some very reliable, dependable players. The second goal they gave Dorgu, as brilliant as that finish was, they were unable to cut out the trade-off of passes between him and Fernandes. And then the third goal, again, Cunha is allowed the time and space to let rip with an outstanding strike, yes, but Arsenal are normally so good at closing that kind of thing down. And I think right now, I said before about Arteta on the touchline, the attitude of most clubs reflects the leadership. And I think Arteta just looked as though the pressure might well be getting to him. And I think it's wide open. I have said that for quite some time. There's so much football to be played, and Arsenal, from a position of supposed strength, now look as though they're there for the taking.
Yeah, well, the Arsenal fans that we were talking to after the game last night, in fact, we got quite a lot of people come up to us to have a chat after the game, Crook. And the idea of the narrative resurfing about them throwing away the title, they really hate the idea of this. They absolutely are trying their best. In fact, one of the guys came over to us and said to us, I will talk about our problems to my Arsenal supporting friends, but any other friends that I've got that support any other clubs, I will not discuss that. I will give this sort of facade that everything is okay, because they're so desperate to shut down the narrative of a wobble, of a potential collapse. What was Mikel Arteta like in the tunnel afterwards? Because you spoke to him.
No, I've got to say he was quite complimentary of Manchester United. He tried to put it into perspective. They're still 4 points clear. They were brilliant, in his words, in the Champions League in midweek. So he certainly didn't portray any signs of panic. But I do think that desperation from the terraces could be their undoing, because I mentioned you at half-time, it was 1-1, and it was silent inside the Emirates as the players went off. And then once United scored their second goal, you could feel the agitation and the frustration. It was the same when I was there a few weeks ago against Brighton. They were 2-0 up in that game, Arsenal. But when they conceded, the whole mood amongst the supporters changed. So I think they are worried that they're going to throw away the championship again. And I look at Arteta, as I say, he carried himself well afterwards. I'm not convinced he should have made that quadruple change. It's very unusual for a manager to make 4 changes in one sweep. And that, to me, just smelled of panic a little bit from Arteta. And also, the stat on Match of the Day last night, Arsenal 17th in the table in terms of the percentage of goals that have come from open play. They are too reliant on set pieces. And I think Mikel Arteta needs to trust his players, the likes of Bukayo Saka, who's off it again, Martin Odegaard, the former players, to actually go out and win games with their talent rather than just relying on free kicks and corners.
Can I just make a very quick point about to what Alex has just said? Because I agree massively. I remember texting a couple of friends of mine, to ask, when was the last time we saw, well, all three of us between us, we've covered lots and lots and lots of hundreds of games. When's the last time you can remember a manager making a quadruple substitution? In 25 years, I cannot remember a single game where that has happened. Now, he might frame that as, the team were playing so bad, I'd have replaced all 11. You know, managers sometimes say that. But the perception of it was panic. It wasn't that the performance was so bad that I had to take 4 players off. It was panic. It was needless, and it sent out the wrong message, I would imagine, to yourself, Alex, and certainly to myself, and to a lot of other neutrals, not necessarily fans of the club, but neutrals, that maybe he looked as though he didn't quite know what to do against this revitalised United side.
Well, look, you mentioned about the lack of creativity, and it would concern you, wouldn't it? I mean, it's amazing, bearing in mind that at the beginning of the season, they looked like the Avengers assembled. You know, you've got some great talent in there. Saka, Eze, Odegaard, Trossard, Waneri, who's now gone off to Marseille, scored 13 minutes into his debut there. Martinelli, Havertz when he's fit, and Madueke. Madueke last scored a goal in the Premier League 1 year ago yesterday. You know, that was Chelsea losing at Manchester City. His previous assist came on the 15th of December 2024. Gabriel Martinelli has also scored in the Premier League just once this season. He's got no assists. Why is there such a lack of creativity in this team with so much talent?
Because I think they've put too much emphasis on the set pieces, and I think that's stifled a lot of their creativity. And there is a fear factor that I think has set in from these players to express themselves. And it's Arteta's job now. They are still 4 points clear. They are still odds-on favourites to win the title. But actually to encourage them to go out and win games with their footballing ability. Big test for them next weekend, you know, away from home against Leeds. Never an easy place to go. It's going to be feisty. I think we're going to find out just how much nerve Arsenal have got, how much stomach for this fight. If they drop points there, my word, it's going to get very edgy.
Does that explain it to you, though, Darren? You know, they've put too much into set pieces, because you can do both, right? You can still release Saka's talent, Madueke's talent, Martinelli's talent, Havertz's talent, without sort of forgetting that, you know, without ignoring set pieces. You can still work on set pieces. You can do both. They're not mutually exclusive things, are they? And actually, they came away from set pieces in December. They hardly scored a goal from any.
Yeah, you're right. But I think the truth is somewhere between what the two of you are saying, because I think the difference between United and Arsenal on Sunday was that Carrick empowered United to play, to take responsibility, and to make their own luck. And even, listen, in the past, when you've seen United, they've fallen behind or conceded late, they've waved the white flag. They didn't do that on this occasion. There was still the belief that they could make something happen. As far as Arsenal are concerned, I think there is a little bit of fear within the players that if they don't do exactly as they are told by Arteta, then they will lose their place in the team and they might not get it back. So they stick to this quite rigid framework of operating, which has been successful so far. But when that meets a team with the belief to attack and take control as United did, they don't quite know what to do.
2 clean sheets in the last 10. Here's another reason why things have gone wrong for Arsenal. They were so resolute. They were so difficult to break down at the early part of the season. But yesterday was the first time they conceded 3 goals at home since May 2023. You lose that defensive resilience. You take away the little bit of flair and creativity because you're putting the handbrake on. Add in the pressure, and all of a sudden you do have a little bit of bother, don't you, Crook?
Yeah, you do. And actually, obviously, the first goal was a defensive mistake. They could have done more, I guess, to stop Dorgu getting his shot away to stop Bruno Fernandes getting the ball into him for the second. The third was just a worldie. But again, there was a lot of space for Matheus Cunha, and was it Perry Groves who was very critical of the Arsenal centre-backs for backing off too much and allowing Cunha to get the shot away.
It was quite interesting. Yeah, because Alan Pardew was like, you've got to just appreciate how good Cunha's strike is. Whereas Perry Groves was very disappointed that Gabriel didn't get out and engage. Actually, watching it back, I think he has got the opportunity to take a step forward and just close the angle down.
Yeah, but I think also that they didn't get that protection from midfield, back line they usually get. Zubimendi was off it. Declan Rice, probably out of desperation, was playing a lot more forward maybe than he would usually do in these big games. Obviously, Ødegaard was taken off at half-time. When we were on air on Friday, actually, even before the game yesterday, I pinpointed that midfield area as quite key. How would Bruno Fernandes, Kobe Mainoo and Casemiro stack up, arguably, against Arsenal's strongest part of the team? United won the midfield battle hands down, and ultimately that was where the game was won and lost. Absolutely.
Manchester City picked up 3 points, albeit against Wolverhampton Wanderers, so they won't be getting too excited just yet, but they end their 4-game winless streak in the Premier League, and they are now 4 points behind Arsenal. Does Mark Gay's arrival, and I thought he was excellent, by the way, in obviously different circumstances, on Saturday, give them a chance of chasing down the Gunners, Darren?
Yes, in a word, because it will be defensive organisation and the confidence that he brings that could yet prove the difference between whoever wins the league and whoever loses out. And I think that there is a calm assurance that he brings to any defence that he plays in. There was a moment in the game where he put his body on the line. Another player did as well, whose name I can't quite remember. And Donnarumma came out and hugged them both. And it was a really interesting moment as well, because it showed just how much emphasis they are putting now into making sure that they tighten up at the back, which is where they've been weakest so far this season. There's been a debate as to whether Gahey keeps his side when the A-listers are fit again. Actually, I think he keeps his side regardless, his place in the team regardless, because those A-listers have had opportunities this season to keep their place, and their defensive record has been poor. If City get it right, I think City could win. I haven't yet ruled out Villa as well. I know we'll get to that in a bit. But if City can manage to get that right at the back and they can get Haaland scoring again, I think they could pip Arsenal. I do not think we play this, and as journalists and fans listening, we do this so often, season in, season out. We declare teams the winner with 6 months of the season, 5 months of the season to go. It is lunacy. It is like declaring the winner of the Grand National at the halfway stage after one circuit. Why do we do this season in, season out? Oh, they've got the best squad. That means they're going to win. They've got this top £50 million player. They're going to win. It is madness. And this season is making mugs of a lot of people who said that Arsenal would walk the league because they had the best players. It doesn't work like that. We've all seen way too much football to be seduced into thinking that.
Yes, why do we do it every year? Why do you do it every month, Alex Crook? Arsenal are going to win the league. Liverpool are definitely going to win the league. Manchester City are going to win the league. Arsenal are going to win the league again. Liverpool are concrete for certainties for a place in the top 4. Why do we go so early? Maybe you can explain it to us as someone who maybe does that occasionally. I mean, not very often, obviously.
Well, you like a bold prediction on this podcast, but I'm going to keep my powder dry when it comes to the title race. I still think it should be Arsenal to lose. I do think that. Because
is that because you've run out of powder?
I'm still not convinced that Manchester City can go on the relentless winning run that will reel Arsenal in if Arsenal can just find a way to navigate these next few weeks. And actually, as much as I've said the next game against Leeds is difficult, you look at their games in February, Sunderland, who don't travel very well at home, Brentford away, obviously Brentford beaten yesterday, and then Tottenham in a North London derby were absolutely dreadful in the reverse fixture. So February looks quite kind for Arsenal in terms of the games ahead.
It's important, isn't it, that Manchester City have less of a reliance on Erling Haaland, and with Semenyo and Marmoush scoring this weekend, that was key for Pep Guardiola's team, who have a big Champions League game this week. They take on Galatasaray, who won at the weekend, drew with Atleti in the previous round of matches. They need points as well in the Champions League. Leroy Sané, how he would love to be a part of the squad that came back and caused Manchester City a bit of an issue. Victor Osimhen, Torreira used to play for Arsenal, would love to upset the apple cart. That's Wednesday night as we have match mayhem. There's loads of matches in the Champions League. Manchester City need points to get into the top 8. At the moment, they look the least likeliest to manage it. Let's just talk quickly about Villa and Newcastle, because Newcastle had a lot of the ball, didn't really test the goalkeeper, Emi Martinez, enough. There was one brilliant save from Lewis Miley's header, but Aston Villa again have picked up 3 points on the road with a Weldy. 33% of their goals come from outside the penalty area. This is their 13th strike out of 34 out of 35 outside the box this season. They just fire in rockets, don't they?
Yeah, and Morgan Rogers told us, didn't he, a few weeks ago, that it wasn't by accident. It's part of design and what they practice on the training pitch. Can they keep it going for the rest of the season? Well, who knows? Because they looked dead on their feet, didn't they, in the game we did against Everton. So to bounce back from that, they won in Europe in midweek, and then to go to Fortress St James's Park, where not many teams have had much joy this season, and pick up a relatively comfortable win. I think you've got to take them seriously as title contenders. On the flip side, though, I've got a stat for you. Bruno Guimaraes, obviously absent for Newcastle, joined the club 4 years ago. How many Premier League games have they managed to win when he's been absent, do you think? In 4 years?
None out of 11.
None. Which is incredible, and shows just how important he is to what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it is amazing. What's his name again?
Bruno Guimaraes, not Gimme Rice.
We had a brilliant episode with Emma Kerwin, one of the newsreaders on talkSPORT on Friday, when she called him Bruno Gimme Rice. It was brilliant. I don't know if she was hungry or what, but she came up with a brilliant nickname accidentally. What do you think about Aston Villa? Can you feed the soul of the Villa fans who believe that they can win the title, Darren?
Well, last season, at the start of the season, Danny Murphy and Adrian Darren were on kick-off Monday night at 7 o'clock, whenever there isn't a Premier League game. We were asked for our Premier League predictions, and I said on that show that I felt Villa would challenge for the title. And Adrian in particular gave me short shrift. And I was a season too soon. But I did feel that Emery was building something special, and he's doing it now. The reason so many people feel they can't win the title is because lots of people aren't impressed by their caliber of player that they have. Not because there isn't the capability that they can do it. There is a precedent for teams coming from nowhere to win the league. We know this. Leicester have done it. I think when Chelsea have done it a couple of times from sort of, finishing 7th or 8th the season before. Liverpool were 25 points off the pace one season and came into the title picture the following season. It can be done. And they've got a brilliant manager. They can score goals. I looked at their team yesterday. He brought Tyrone Mings off the bench. He's just bought Abraham. It's terrific management because it's really inspired Watkins to go to another level. He was able to bring Luca Digne off the bench as well. He and Leon Bailey as well. He was able to bring off the bench. You're talking about international
Who's back from a
footballers.
loan spell at Roma, where it didn't really work out for him, and he's come back in. He's gone straight back into the fold, and he's getting on with it.
And this is my point. I think Villa do have the players, the squad, to be able to compete. What people have an issue with is that they don't think Villa's squad is A-list enough. And that's another one of the traps that we fall into. We think that it's the team with the money, the glamour, the A-listers who are the one. It's obvious they're going to do it. But we write off the Villas of this world, even though Villa have won now, 11 of their last 14 matches. They are absolutely flying, and they are showing no signs of stopping. And Tammy Abraham will make them he will only make them stronger in attack.
He's got a lot of goals for Besiktas this season. I think it's because they're a team, right? And they're very well coached. They're a unit. They're an actual team that work together brilliantly. Everybody knows their roles. Everybody knows how they're supposed to operate in the system. And if you watch them, you can see the shape work that's been done. You can see the detail that's been passed on. Yes, the meetings go on for an hour and a half. Yes, the players can sometimes be overloaded with information. But if you speak to the Aston Villa players, they will tell you they'll all buy into it because they can see that what Unai Emery is doing works. The information that he passes on, those long meetings in the video room where he goes through the clips, that it all translates to success on the pitch. And when, as a player, you're having success on the pitch, you're quite happy to take on those meetings and sit in those rooms and do those video sessions, because you know that's the only real way you're going to take on the information, because you can't train every day because you're playing every 3 days, and you'd be absolutely cream crackered if you went full tilt. So instead of overexerting yourself, you're playing games, doing recovery sessions, doing the meetings, getting the information on, and using that to better yourself as a football team. I think they look like a team that is just supremely coached.
Do you know what would be great? And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but if we get to the last day of the season and Aston Villa are still in contention for the title, because you know what their final match of the season is?
Arsenal.
Manchester City away.
Oh.
That would be amazing.
That would be great. Do you know what the other thing is actually, and just sort of moving on to the last day of the season, the current bottom 6 in the Premier League all play each other on the final day of the season, which is really weird. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Talking of the bottom 6, let's get to Burnley. They aren't the story of this game. That firmly belongs to Thomas Frank. A big crash down back to earth for Spurs following their victory over Dortmund on Tuesday night. Spurs fans audibly chanting, "You're getting sacked in the morning" at Thomas Frank at the end of the match. Spurs away fans, this is, that are doing that. Spurs had Brentford away, Sunderland at home, Bournemouth away, West Ham at home, and Burnley away. And Darren, they failed to win any of those. They've now got Manchester City, travel to Manchester United, host Newcastle, host Arsenal, and travel to Fulham. How are they going to negotiate that?
They're not good enough. They're not good enough in defence. They can score goals in attack, but they are lightweight in midfield. They're inconsistent. 5 games without a win, 2 wins in their last 14. I'm worried for Thomas Frank. He wanted a bigger job. He gave that round of interviews last year where he said he was ready for a new challenge. And what he's now finding out, guys, is that when you are at a bigger club, you do not get the leeway that you would do if you're at Brentford, if you either lose big or go on a bad run. The fans don't like his safety-first football. They were chanting for Pochettino at Burnley. And also, as you say, he'd be sacked in the morning. I was on a podcast 2 weeks ago with a Spurs fans podcast 2 weeks ago. And to a man, they were all of the opinion, even though I was arguing the case that he had bad starts at Brøndby and at Brentford, they were saying, no, we don't like the football. We want him to go. And the results have only just got worse. And I know through this show, you've been sort of talking about teams having good wins in the Champions League. And so it's a surprise they've not done so well in the Premier League. The Premier League is a much stronger league than the other leagues in Europe. I don't think the Champions League form is an indicator of what teams are doing in the Premier League. Liverpool, terrific in the Champions League, poor in the Premier League. Arsenal, terrific in the Champions League, beaten at home in the Premier League. Spurs, winners in the Champions League the other day, shocking at Burnley.
So what happens next, Crook? Because they have got exceptional Champions League form. They beat Frankfurt on Wednesday night, and they're into the last 16 of the Champions League. And I think the optics to the rest of the world of sacking a manager that's got you into the last 16 of the Champions League looks a little bit nuts, really. However, as Darren has already articulated, speak to every single Spurs fan, and 80% of them will tell you this guy is not for us.
Yeah, and as you've already alluded to, when the away supporters turn on the manager, that is pretty turbulent. It's 2 wins in their last 14 in the Premier League. If we're talking about Crystal Palace, who I'm sure we'll come on to, as potentially being sucked into a relegation battle, they're on the same number of points as Spurs. So you've got to be looking at Tottenham in the same terms. He's got the fewest points per game of any Tottenham manager that ENIC have ever hired, which is another pretty damning stat. And then you look at the run of games to come after Frankfurt: City at home, United away, Newcastle, and then that North London derby. So you can't see where Tottenham's next Premier League win is coming from. But I almost feel like it's Groundhog Day for Tottenham. They will say it's too short a turnaround ahead of that Frankfurt game to make a change of manager. They'll probably win that because Frankfurt are already out of the competition, and Spurs' European form, as Darren has said, has been good, but it only papers over the cracks, doesn't it? Ultimately, as Ange Postecoglou was, any manager should be judged on what they do week in, week out in the Premier League. And as much as I like Thomas Frank, he's floundering in that department.
Okay, let's move on to the Darren Lewis section of the podcast. Bournemouth 3, Liverpool 2.
Up the cherries.
This is a big setback for Liverpool, Darren. They face Carrick in the Champions League this week. And now, look, a lot of people were talking about this incident in the first half that sort of sums up, I think, where Liverpool are. And it raises a few questions, right? It's around Bournemouth's second goal. Lewis still works for the Daily Mail. He's the Merseyside football correspondent there. And he tweeted about this. He said Arne Slot and Spike Huishoff, who is the assistant manager, were screaming at Alisson and Liverpool to kick the ball out of play, to let them make the substitution prior to the goal. The game went on for several minutes. They didn't do it, and Bournemouth ended up scoring 2-0. This is because Joe Gomez was injured. They wanted to get Wataru Endo onto the pitch. Clearly, Joe Gomez couldn't continue. They needed to get the replacement on. Even for whatever reason, the players didn't hear or notice this request. Surely they should have seen themselves that they didn't want to continue with basically 10 players.
It's a really good question. It's a really important question. And it's a really fascinating question as well, because it's been framed as the players not wanting to listen to the head coach, which I think is absolute garbage, right? But as you rightly say, even if they didn't want to take instruction from the touchline, they would not have wanted their teammate, their friend, to be in a position where he might be in pain and struggling. So I think it was a massive breakdown in communication and nothing more. What it does mean is that Liverpool as a club need to address this problem. They'll be gutted to have seen Mark Gahey go to Manchester City because they dropped the ball at the end of the last transfer window. Obviously, all our thoughts are with Konate, whose father passed away last week. But Liverpool have been wafer thin at the back for some time now. The other young defender, Leone, he's out for the season because he's injured. They've got to address the problem that they have. They've got to be decisive with it. They don't tend to mess around when they want the players that they need. So I still do think that they'll go out in the market before the window closes next week and do something that addresses that problem. They're very decisive clubs, and they normally tend to get their players from the clouds that no one's really thought of until the deal is done. But I think that whole debacle that you're summing up underlines Liverpool's crying need. They need to address that defence that has been so poor during this first half of the season.
Interestingly, because Darren says they're quite decisive when they want a player, they go and get one, and that has been historically true, especially under the new duo of Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, who are the sort of sporting powerhouses in the boardroom. But is there a feeling here that maybe they might not recruit in this window because if they do, they're recruiting for a manager who might not be the manager at the beginning of next season?
Oh, Sam.
Well, I'm only asking the question because if you look at, you talked about digital pressure earlier, right? You talked about digital pressure earlier, and having a look at social media, there's starting to be a lot of murmurs about Arne Slot's future amongst Liverpool supporters, and a lot of people now are sort of bringing up like the sort of contradictions in what he says. He talks well, I think. I've always found him really personable. And Liverpool are not a club that usually sack a title-winning manager. In fact, it's never happened in their history before. But there's a lot of sort of these resurfacing of quotes. If you go back to September 2024, there's this quote that he comes out with after they beat West Ham in the Carabao Cup saying, "I prefer to play against low blocks. You know, you have the ball a lot of the time. It gives you the chance to try and create stuff. You'd expect us to do that with the quality that we have." Fast forward a year, and all he's talked about is how he hates playing against low blocks. So I don't know. I just felt like just over the weekend there was just a ramping of that up. And I'm not trying to throw a grenade in, Crook, but you've got your ear to the ground here, and I think even you felt that as well.
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously when the Mo Salah situation kicked off, was basically a power struggle between star player and manager. The Liverpool hierarchy very much came down the side of Arne Slot. But I think with every defeat, every drop point in the Premier League, I think he's more vulnerable, particularly that given the fact that Xabi Alonso, I think, would have been their top target had he not been going around Madrid, is available. And you're right, certainly the noise from a lot of Liverpool fans is that maybe a change of manager is needed, which seems really harsh in the circumstances. And when I say circumstances, you have to go right back to the tragic passing of Diogo Jota. And in some ways, I think once that happened this season was always going to be a bit of a write-off, because there are players in that dressing room who are obviously still grieving for their teammate. There are new players coming in who probably don't know how to handle themselves in what is a very unique situation. They sold Luis Diaz as well. I do think they've missed him, but financially it stacked up to cash in when they did. And you mentioned that they do have decisive people in Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, but they're also quite a frugal ownership group, the Fenway Sports Group. So you look at the Mark Gay deal, for example. Yes, I'm sure they would have loved to have signed him, but they'd have weighed up the transfer fee, the signing on fee for his agent, the wages that he was asking for. And I think they just felt that for a player who was available on a free transfer in a few months' time, they couldn't financially justify it. The season's not over. They've still got a chance of at least qualifying for the Champions League. And you look at their form in that competition. Again, maybe this highlights what Darren has said about the strength of the Premier League when it comes to the Champions League. I just think they're better suited, Liverpool, to playing in the Champions League. They're better suited to playing teams who come onto them rather than sit with a low block, which has been a big problem, particularly at Anfield this season. But having said that, Bournemouth did take the games to them and they were still found wanting. But everything that can go against Liverpool and Arne Slot seems to, doesn't it? Look at the first goal. Uncharacteristic error from Virgil van Dijk. In fairness, he spoke to the written media after the game and he held his hands up for that. Then you look at the winning goal. He collides with his own teammate. He thinks he's been fouled and then he realises it's Curtis Jones. And again, he admitted that when he spoke to reporters. And Joe Gomez, who's had rotten luck with injury, he's been clattered by his own goalkeeper and ended up having to go off. So a lot has gone against Liverpool this season. And that point you make, actually, about they've never sacked a title-winning manager, Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards will be aware of that. And they will be reluctant to buck the trend. But if results don't improve, I think that cloud of Xabi Alonso hanging over Arne Slot only becomes darker.
Darren, I know you don't like that because, and listen, I totally get it. Because if you actually factor in all of the things that have happened, and I don't actually think he's got the tools, Arne Slot, this season. I think if you look at his squad, it looks very, very light. And of course, then you factor in the tragedy that's happened. It clearly is a very difficult thing to manage. I think Virgil van Dijk said it was disrespectful to ask him a question the other day about, I think someone asked him about Xabi Alonso in a press conference, which was a little bit weird. But anyway, and maybe it is a little bit disrespectful to bring it up. But there are people that are bringing it up. The conversation is being had. As a Liverpool supporter yourself, do you sort of feel that, allegedly, do you feel that, do you feel that sort of responsibility, that sort of weight of history where Liverpool don't do this, they don't behave in this manner, so therefore it cannot happen?
I think the people who make decisions will be aware of the history of the club. I certainly think, as Alex was saying, that once we had the tragic events of Jota, this season was a write-off. If Liverpool were to finish in the top four, that would be a huge achievement based on what they've had to contend with, that people tend to forget, because we do that once the football starts. All of the sympathies and the human empathy that we should have goes out the window, and we judge these guys purely on results where, God forbid, if us, the people listening, watching this, if we had issues in our personal lives, we would get that time that we need to be able to go away and address those things in the way that we should. I think the disparity between the Premier League form and the Champions League form is part of the reason why Liverpool's season is still very much alive. And if you look at the Champions League top 8, that top 8, 5 of them are from England. If City win this coming week, that will be all 6 clubs in the top 8 of the Champions League group stage phase. That's the strength of this competition. But Liverpool can't keep competing in that competition if they don't go out and buy another centre half, regardless. Whether it's I'm speculating here. I'm not saying they should, but whether it's a Van der Ven to kind of put the kind of pressure on Van Dijk that Abraham puts on Watkins, for example, at Aston Villa, whether it's an Ezri Konsa from Aston Villa. I don't know, but they do need to go out and address those problems because City have done that. They've had a similar issue. They've gone out, they've been decisive. Liverpool normally are. Just one quick thing as well. I don't think it was necessarily frugal, Crook, for them not to get Gahey. I think they did, like any other club, look at it and say, does it make good business sense to be spending this much money for a guy that we could get on a free? And they couldn't have foreseen the emergency that they've been forced into. But either way, that ship has sailed now, and I think they'll go out and get someone else before the window closes. Big star.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that I know it was an expensive deal to do, and there's a lot of money that you had to pay in order to get Mark Gay through the door. But it's Mark Gay, you know, he's very, very good. He is an A-list defender. You know, if you're paying, I don't know, what did we hear? It was 65 million quid to do that deal during this January transfer window, Crook, something like that.
Yeah, about 60.
All in, we're talking.
Yeah.
About 60, right? Okay, 60 million quid for Mark Gay. I think it's probably worth doing. I mean, I mean, maybe I'm wrong here.
But when you've been so close to getting him for 35 in the previous transfer window, you know, that extra 25
that's
million
your fault.
is
That's
going to
your
fit in your
fault.
stomach.
You should have done it then. You should have done it. You should have done it for 40 and then cut your losses, but you didn't do it. So now you're in a situation where it's a lot more urgent. Well, actually, is it worth an extra 20 million? Well, yeah, it is. So, but yeah, maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it will come back to haunt them. Maybe they've got another plan for the summer and they've identified somebody else who they're going to get. Maybe
I don't think it'll be Van der Ven, by the way. I think the money that Tottenham are asking for again is going to be too high for Liverpool.
Well, over 100 million, isn't it?
I remember when everyone said, "Oh, last year, no chance will anyone get Isak." Isak, I think 150 million pounds, no chance. Liverpool went, okay, we'll ask the question.
Well, you never know. You never know. It could
You
happen.
never know.
If it does happen, Tottenham fans will certainly be in meltdown because he is absolutely stellar. And I just don't know how he and Romero keep getting them out of serious issues. I mean, without Romero and Van der Ven, God knows where they would be. Okay, let's move on to a couple of clubs in peril, West Ham and Crystal Palace. Well, West Ham United showing a bit of fighting spirit. The London Stadium full of joy and energy. They make it back-to-back wins in the Premier League, keeping their hopes of survival alive. Didn't help them that then Nottingham Forest went and won away at Brentford to extend that gap again. So it's still 5 points to safety. There's a lot of work to do. There is a video doing the rounds, Darren, of new West Ham first-team coach Paco Gémez conversing animatedly with Nuno Espirito Santo when Max Kilman was being introduced in stoppage time at the end of the game. And since his appointment, actually, the Hammers have won back-to-back league games. We don't know how influential Gémez is, but it does feel as though West Ham have been a little bit more attacking since his introduction. I mean, is he going to become a cult figure? They're going to have like a mural made of it.
It might well be. We don't know. We can't quantify it. What we do know is that Nuno has finally managed to get the right combination from a group of players that had done okay in patches, but didn't have the defensive organisation to be able to keep it up. I still think that they do need more in defence, and I'll be surprised if they don't go out and get another defender, maybe two, before the window closes. But also, you're right to highlight the people around Nuno because they need everything that they can get. And if it is that dynamism in the backroom staff, those people who are really going to energise that team to understanding the peril that they're in, then that is a key thing. A lot of people felt that West Ham would give up, wave the white flag. I think they played well in the Forest game and were unlucky to be on the wrong end of some horrendous refereeing decisions. I think they've got a lot in their attack, far more for my money than Leeds and just as much as Nottingham Forest. And I'm not surprised that they put these two wins together because they do have that quality in their front line. But what they need now is depth. They need more organisation in defence and they need more depth in attack. And if they get that, I think that they will stay up.
Yes, they do need a little bit of help in defence because they cannot keep a clean sheet. They haven't kept one under Nuno Espirito Santo. When he came in, he didn't bring any coaching staff. They promoted all of his backroom team from within the club. They're from the academy and from elsewhere. So the fact that he's added in someone of his own might just be a secret to success. Let's see what happens. I thought Sunderland looked a little bit lost without Granit Xhaka in the middle of the park.
Yeah.
That was a big miss for them, although he did manage to still make some headlines by engaging with the locals. Let's talk about Crystal Palace and Chelsea. Chelsea 3-1 winners. Chelsea tried their best to give Crystal Palace a head start when Benoit Badiashile decided to he just passed to the Crystal Palace forwards. Just turned around and said, "There you go. Have a free shot on goal, fellas," which they did. Chelsea also a little bit combative in midfield. Moises Caicedo maybe a little bit lucky not to get sent off for 2 yellow cards. But ultimately, they did quite well in the end, Chelsea, and got the job done. The story, though, is not Liam Rosenior this week, even though Crook has come dressed as him. It is, in fact, what's happening at Crystal Palace, because it's 11 without a win, 1 goal in 11 for Jean-Philippe Mateta. Adam Wharton's now been sent off, so he's going to miss their next game. They don't have the deepest of squad. They've lost their captain in Mark Guéhi. Are they going to get dragged into a relegation battle, Crook?
Listen, it's a lot to make up. They're 8 points clear of the bottom 3. As much as West Ham have improved, I still think at this stage of the season that is a significant gap. But it's a cause for concern, isn't it? And you have to factor in they were dumped out of the FA Cup by non-league Macclesfield as well. Obviously, dropped points in the Conference League. They've ended up with an extra 2 games they probably could have done without in that competition. And all the while, there seems to be this uneasy truce between Steve Parish and Oliver Glasner, which I just think might rear its head again, because we're in the last week of the window. They spent a lot of money on Brennan Johnson, but there's not too much indication they're going to do a lot more to help their manager and strengthen the squad. And I think if we get to the end of the window and he's not got what he wants, then I think he'll go on the offensive again, Oliver Glasner, and maybe this time it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I wonder how Crystal Palace fans are feeling after he came out with that rant and the fact he's announced he's leaving at the end of the season. I do think that's probably had an impact in the dressing room as well, certainly not helped with the Mateta situation. I wonder if he's as loved by Palace supporters as he was when he was lifting the FA Cup aloft at Wembley at the end of last season. I think he's caused a lot of their problems, Oliver Glasner. Not sure he needed to go public about his departure when he did, and that just felt like a fit of pique because they'd agreed to sell Mark Guéhi the day before a big game.
Never works when you announce your departure before you go, because everybody just comes off the bridle just a little bit because they know that you're not the man to impress anymore. I do think Steve Parish and the board have got some questions to answer, though, because they didn't exactly invest like loads of money at the beginning of the season. But then again, they don't do that. That's Crystal Palace. They're not there to knock a team on and try and move up the food chain. They're there to maintain the status quo. They did win the FA Cup. They may still win the Conference League. They're in a good position in that competition, but it does feel as if it's going to be a big old arse because they don't have the resources. Darren Lewis, I know that this appearance of yours is going to be trending on X very, very shortly. I know you're that famous nowadays that is what is going to happen. So we're going to turn our notifications off because we know that we're going to be bombarded. The return of the king. But it's been great to have you. It's been a delight, in fact. It's been a delight.
No, the pleasure's all mine, honestly. I love to join you guys, and I will give my PA your numbers.
And I'll get her to unblock you. Yeah, okay.
Well, indeed, yes.
Thank you very much. Loads of live football for you this week, Wednesday night, Thursday night, from the Champions League and from the Europa League as well on talkSPORT. Get the talkSPORT app, you'll be able to listen to it all. We've got PSG against Newcastle, which is our feature game on Wednesday night, but we'll keep you in touch with everything, and if things change, we'll bounce around and it's going to be absolute mayhem. Crook, you looking forward to it?
Yeah, do you know, I am. I'm covering Frankfurt Spurs and then I'm at Villa Park on Thursday. But do you know the best thing about the fact that United are out of every competition bar the Premier League? When we win a game, I can enjoy it for a week. I can relax. Brilliant.
Yes. Conversely, when more often you lose a game, we have to listen to it for a week as well, which is a bit of an issue. But luckily, everything's positive today. Everything's positive. I'm going to Liverpool Carrick on Wednesday night. Looking forward to that. Before that, Everton Leeds is live on talkSPORT Monday Night Football. So if you're consuming that this podcast just before that, then we have got that live game as well for you. And at the weekend, we've got Liverpool versus Newcastle Saturday night, 8 o'clock. That is going to be an absolute belter. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much for joining us on Premier League All Access. We're back on Thursday to look back at all the European action and to preview a weekend of Premier League action as well. Make sure you tell all your friends about us.